Hi friends, welcome to the NPTEL course Strategy and Technology, a practical primer. We are in week 12 with the theme of Technology and Strategy case studies. In this lecture, the 61st in the series, which also happens to be the final lecture of our course, we will have a closeout session. We combined strategy and technology as part of the course. Strategy is about the future, strategizing for the future and executing for the future. Technology is the core driver of all futuristic developments. This course has combined technology and strategy so that we can all use technology as a powerful implementer of strategy, and that would provide sustainable growth for firms. In the past, we used to focus on features, quality, and cost as the prime drivers of development. Later on, we recognized the importance of safety, health, and sustainability. But today, the perspective is much more inclusive and much more comprehensive. It is environmental empathy, social responsibility, and corporate governance. These will drive sustainability in organizations. These will also drive flow of funds into organizations. This course has been a very unique course for me as a developer, and I'm sure would have been for you as the learners. It has been a unique integration of the domains of strategy and technology. I have offered several theories and models for strategy and technology. These were enriched with practical examples and case studies. I tried to teach strategic skills that are integrated with technology insights. There have been many building blocks of strategy, many drivers of technology that have been discussed in this course. As a result, you would be in a position to deploy technology in a strategic perspective. Our goal is the same, whichever way you apply, that is strategic deployment of strategy or technological nuances of strategy. The goals are enterprise growth, economic prosperity, and professional fulfillment. This has been a 12-week 61 lecture course with 5 lectures per week and with the end of the week assignments. I thank you for doing all the assignments and providing your feedback. Each week focused on one core theme and each lecture covered 2 specific topics. I have provided illustrative and experiential examples throughout and wrapped up with 10 case studies of technologically savvy or would have been technologically savvy companies and how innovation and enterprise growth was achieved based on technology and strategy. The unique feature of this course is that it has 1700 data and information rich slides. It has presented global as well as local perspectives of strategic and technological development. So a volume of information that would be of great use not only as part of this course but as reference material for you as you go forward with your work stream has been provided through these 1700 information slides. I have used images essentially for educational purposes and for impactful presentation. These are done under a Creative Commons policy only for educational purposes. The copyrights of all the images are fully respected. The themes of the 12 weeks have been as follows. Started with structural and strategic analysis, moved on to strategy formulation, focused on strategy execution, and analyzed how we can develop competitive strategy in the first 4 weeks. Then we started analyzing each of the stakeholder groups in the enterprise ecosystem. We looked at buyers, suppliers, and competitors. We looked at structural analysis and competitive strategy, which brings together all the stakeholders. I also proposed a very unique concept of dynamic strategy equilibrium, wherein everybody would try to reach a state of superiority and finally end up achieving a strategic equilibrium, which of course will not be static, will be dynamic. From week 8 onwards, we moved more into technology domains. Technology and competitive strategy, followed by technology as strategy driver, and then the focus of technology in terms of customer centricity were discussed. The last 2 lectures focused on technology and business as well as technology and strategy. You would have appreciated that multiple theoretical and practical constructs were provided as part of the course. The unique features of this course are in terms of the following. It provided a detailed and integrated overview of the multifaceted domain of strategy and technology. It helped you to think about and practice vision, mission and goal setting, as well as crafting a strategic plan so that the execution can be taken up by you based on a particular guidance you have yourself developed. Presented multiple frameworks for enabling enterprise competitiveness, growth and sustainability. I envisage this course to be useful for a broad spectrum of students and working professionals. I was of the opinion that this course would develop and hone their strategic skills, integrating multiple technology insights. This course, with its emphasis on technology and strategy, aligns with the IIT's and IISc's lead in this area, and the course is a unique one because it provides strategy with technology edge. I want to at this stage recap some of the fundamental concepts I covered. By no means these are all the fundamental concepts that I covered, because in a lecture of 1700 slides, it is very difficult to pick which is the right one to be used in the closeout session. Nevertheless, I tried to pick about 100 slides which reflect some of the important concepts that I have talked about, that I have illustrated in this course. Fundamentally, I talked about the 4 phases of strategic management, how strategic management evolved over the decades. In the decades of 1960s and 70s, it was more in the nature of annual planning. Then it moved to long-range planning based on forecasts. 5 years was the term usually. Later on, we had the era of strategic planning. And finally, strategic management is the greater understanding that we have of this domain. Many companies drove this transition from one phase of strategic management to the other phase. Similarly, several management gurus contributed very unique thoughts, more particularly Michael Porter's competitive strategy theory and also other contributions from C.K. Prahalad in terms of core competence, and various other management gurus who provided several related as well as lateral thought processes for the domain of strategy. 3 new drivers for business were presented not only as part of this slide but throughout the course: globalization, innovation and sustainability. Sustainability is one of the most important factors that we need to recognize, and for that innovation is most important, and today's world is highly globalized. Consumption-led growth is no longer the only business mantra. We need to have sustainability of the planetary resources, and to be able to do that, we not only need more products and more services, but we need those products and services that will reduce consumption and enhance recyclability and reuse. Innovation is going to take us to a next higher level of productivity and excellence, but innovation also must protect and preserve the planet. I talked about different kinds of industries which are important from a strategic planning and strategic management perspective. Industries are national industries, regional industries, clustered industries and global industries. And in terms of the growth nature, we can classify the industries as monopoly industries, industries we are created when the technology is that of the pioneer and nobody else's. Then we have emerging industries, growth industries, mature industries, declining industries, and finally fragmented industries. This industry classification is important from a strategic perspective because the structures of the industry and the strategies of the industry vary based on the nature of the industry. We also understood the definition of industry and business. There is a 4-circle way of looking at something which we see all the time, a commercial vehicle industry. At the core, it is one of commercial vehicle as a product. But look broader, you will find that as part of the road transport industry, and even more broad, transport industry. And finally, today's concept is that any vehicle, be it the commercial vehicle or the passenger car or the two-wheeler, supports mobility. So mobility is the industry. So how do you think of your industry and how do you think of your business is one of the important concepts that has been covered in this session. Then the role of innovation has been considered from different perspectives. Should we have progressive change, intermediating change, creative change, or radical change? In each of these aspects, innovation plays multiple ways of contributing to the change. In the case of progressive change, the role is very limited. It is incremental or minor innovation. But when you talk about intermediating change, it could work in terms of innovation in business process or in the use of assets. Creative change looks at innovation in assets as well as in R&D and manufacturing processes. And finally, when we come to the fundamental innovation or the radical innovation, we looked at complete overhaul of products, manufacturing and relationships. This is the radical innovation. To formulate a competitive strategy, we need to ask ourselves three questions. What is the business doing now? Which means that we should understand the current strategy. We should list the implied assumptions. What is happening in the environment all around us? What is the impact that could have on us? Therefore, we have to conduct industry analysis, competitor analysis, social analysis, understand the firm's strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats from the environment. And what should the business be doing? Therefore, we had to work on a future for the company. That would include setting the assumptions and strategy, choosing the strategic alternatives to be considered and prioritizing based on strategic choice. And number of factors are to be considered in this comprehensive strategic planning process. A lot of focus has been laid on Porter's 5 forces theory. There are 5 competitive forces that are relevant for any industry: the threat of new entrants, bargaining power of buyers, threat of substitute products or services, bargaining power of suppliers, and the intensity of industry rivalry. We illustrated the Porter's 5 forces model in terms of the firm, the industry, and the environment. The impact of structural analysis on competitive strategy has been another highlight of this course. I illustrated how structural analysis of an industry can be carried out and what does structural analysis mean. Then the development of firm's capabilities as the foundation of the development of competitive strategy has also been provided. As part of the course, we focused on the 3 generic competitive strategies. I spent a lot of time explaining the generic strategies of cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. I illustrated that a company can follow 1 or 2 of these strategies and probably not all the 3 of the strategies. I also mentioned that a company with a larger product portfolio or a broader business portfolio can probably pursue cost leadership in one area, differentiation in another area, and focus in another area, depending upon the context of that particular industry segment, market segment, and the firm's position. So a company's strategic process must focus on every detail of the strategies required to enable the chosen generic competitive strategy or the set of competitive strategies that are relevant over the entire business spectrum. I also said that competitive dynamics are always at play. Every company would like to excel not only in what it is doing but also in what others are doing. This will eventually make companies become more broad-based. They become full-line manufacturers or full-line providers of services. This is the basic foundation of the strategic equilibrium that drives firms in an industry to pursue seemingly multiple strategies but end up into a state of convergence on a strategic equilibrium. But that strategic equilibrium will never be static. It will be dynamic because firms will be coming up with newer ways of developing and selling their products, or they will be coming up with newer products and newer services. To analyze our products and businesses, we need methodologies. I explained the importance of BCG matrix to understand the product portfolio and that of GE matrix to understand the business portfolio. Globalization has come to stay and it will continue to grow in spite of the protectionism that could come in 1 or 2 economies from time to time. Professor Pankaj Ghemawat's cage framework was discussed in significant detail. Cultural distance, administrative or political distance, geographic distance, and economic distance were explained in detail. Apart from the cage framework, I talked about the AAA framework of Pankaj Ghemawat about leveraging different resources from different geographies to achieve different purposes. One of the most integrating and most helpful conceptual framework for viewing the future development is the multi-growth horizon framework. This has been proposed by McKinsey as part of its consultancy studies, and it is very elegant as also very impactful. Horizon 1 in this framework is the existing business, Horizon 2 is the emerging business, and Horizon 3 is the futuristic business. I have illustrated through examples of several companies as to how this three horizon concept helps the companies maintain a strategy of continuous growth and actually achieve it. I also talked about the strategy map. In case you want to enter into a particular industry or you want to turn around your firm's business in an industry, we need a strategy map. And that strategy map is typically developed based on the strategic approach of strategic balanced scorecard. And this strategy map comprises 4 elements: learning element, process element, customer element, financial element. I looked at several examples from the real life developments and also a theoretical example of developing a strategy map for electric vehicle manufacture. I also talked about the strategy framework. How do we integrate all of what has been discussed and taken forward? So environmental scanning or the strategic planning process, the strategy formulation process of vision and mission, objectives, strategies and policies, the actual execution framework of programs and tactics, budgets, procedures, and the evaluation and control part of strategic framework. Only when this entire strategic framework is available in a company, this company can achieve the required results from the strategic planning process or the broader strategic management process. To do the strategy implementation, we need to have not only good strategy but also good execution. This was a very interesting conceptualization of strategy and implementation nexus. A company can have a weak strategy or a robust strategy. It can also execute poorly or execute in a strong manner. Generally, there is no right strategy or wrong strategy. There could be, however, good execution or poor execution. Assuming that we have strategies which are intrinsically great, we can get at this kind of matrix. If a company has a weak strategy and also weak implementation, such firms are bound to decline and finally exit out of an industry. If a company has got robust strategy but is poor in implementation, it would have potential but it would not be able to leverage that potential. A company which has weak strategy but great execution can still make up the lost time on the strategy and could live for another day. And if during that period the strategy is revived and rejuvenated, then probably it could go into a growth phase. But companies which have robust strategy as well as robust implementation are those firms which would grow for perpetuity. Every firm and every student of strategy and technology should aim for perpetual growth in companies. I talked about different organization structures that are available. At times when a company starts off on a humble note, you will have nothing but a compact team, 3 or 4 people, usually the co-founders, working to start the business. From that, the evolution will be to a functional organization. And typically in the growth stage of a company, functional structure is the one which will be the most important. Depending upon the type of growth, whether it was regional growth or product-led growth, we will have regional organization or divisional SBU organization taking root. And finally, when the business is global, multidimensional and multi-business, you will have a matrix type of organization wherein one function will report to local resource as well as to the global resource. That is the way organization structures evolve. Quite apart from these organizational structures, I talked about linking pin organization, the tail organization, and nuances in these organization structures themselves. Culture is an important determinant of strategy. So how do we have good culture in an organization? Tone at the top is very important. We have to set as leaders clear expectations of how the organization should conduct itself and the people should conduct themselves. And we should ensure that there are embedded practices and philosophies in the organization so that everyone is culturally aligned and whatever is to be done is owned by everyone across the organization. If you have a culture of this nature, strategy is driven by culture in such organizations. Then I move to discussing strategic management for the 2020s, that is the current decade. We will certainly have established management principles because they do not change. But there is also an evolving management toolkit that is coming in. I discussed a lot about the evolving management toolkit along with the established management principles. But one of the fervent appeals of this course was also to integrate the new science and technology insights and develop a holistic paradigm of strategic management for the 2020s. So in a world that is globalized yet protectionist, where everyone must be consumption driven but also be very respectful of sustainability and governance, we need to put in place everything that we know and that we can imagine, and that includes the established management principles, evolving management toolkit, and the new science and technology insights. Surprises, vicissitudes are a part of life, particularly the business life. COVID-19 itself has highlighted how things can be completely unpredictable. So I talked about structure for coping with surprises. We always need an operating team. That is the core execution team. It has to run its operations to meet strategies and goals. But then we also need flexibility team, a team that adapts itself to the developing changes and copes with surprises and re-strategies. And finally, we also need a resilience team, which will help in the long-term restructuring of the firm to build resilience to cope with adversities. These three teams, whether they are really identified in terms of the persons or they are assembled and disassembled based on the context, must exist as concepts, as operating parameters in an organization. They could be virtual, cross-functional at sometimes, they would be real and physically felt at some other times, but this concept of having three teams, operating team, flexibility team and resilience team, is a very unique concept which you must really adopt in your organizations. I also spoke about the difference between business strategy and business model and the interconnectivity. Business strategy is a set of approaches to enable a company to achieve its vision and goals: product market expansion or diversification, integration, mergers and acquisitions, core versus non-core, and such similar activities are all parts of business strategy. However, a method adopted by a company to earn revenues and profits, such as franchising, consigning, outsourcing, branding, bundling, these all fall under the aegis of business model. But these are all interconnected. Business strategy needs a business model for execution, and a business model needs to work within a business strategy for fulfilling the strategic intent and achieving alignment. Business strategy is directional and focused. It is milestones driven. It is essential for sustainable competitive advantage. Whereas business model is operational and quantitative. It is metrics driven and is essential for day-to-day results. Successful businesses require both business strategy and business model, and they must be aligned and they must be top class. Business strategy comprises several functional strategies such as product strategy, technology strategy, operations strategy, sales and marketing strategy, financial strategy, and human resources strategy. I also illustrated a practical example of Porter's 5 forces model. I took the Indian passenger car industry and demonstrated how over the years from the 1970s to 2020s, the various competitive forces varied in terms of their occurrence and their impact. I also made a model of generating this structural analysis as an ongoing theory and practical deployment. I said that Porter's industrial forces theory is still valid, it is good, but today's industrial development is very much impacted by economic development. So I talked about 5 economic forces. Again, this is a very original concept that has been proposed in this lecture. I talked about 5 economic forces: power of global capital flows, threat of inflation, bargaining power of national markets, bargaining power of national technologies, and intensity of national rivalry as the 5 primal economic forces that govern not only the development of an economy but the development of an industry, particularly when we are a part of the global economic network. So the importance of the 5 economic forces model as an overarching umbrella for the 5 industry forces model has been proposed in this lecture series. I also spoke about system liquidity. I saw the system liquidity and proposed it to you as a combination of 3 types of liquidity. One, purely customer level, that is, customers look at their purchasing means and they encourage products and services. Governments are committed to economic growth and they have a stake in the propagation of this corporate customer virtuous cycle. Then firms and customers together form one integrated ecosystem and they require together financial resources to carry out their respective obligations of manufacture and consumption. So the basic purchasing power of the customers coupled with the economic development that is unleashed by the governments combined with the ecosystem power of liquidity that the customers and firms together provide constitutes the system liquidity, and any industry is impacted by the system liquidity that is available. I spoke about the example of Vodafone Idea to illustrate how system liquidity is a very important aspect of corporate survival as well as corporate growth. So having looked at the 5 economic forces and previously the 5 industrial forces, I finally developed the 6 forces model as one of the more easier ways of integrating the economic forces and the industrial forces. In this 6 forces model, we have the Porter's 5 forces model supplemented by the power of system liquidity, and the power of system liquidity is taken as the surrogate for these economic forces that I talked about earlier. I also talked about 6 forces of collaboration. In the collaborative network, it is not all about competition. We must as firms compete, but we must also collaborate. There is no need for every company to rediscover the wheel. It would mean a lot of wastage of resources. Instead, something else could be done more effectively. The 6 forces of collaboration have been detailed by me in terms of market expansion, collaborative power of product substitution, collaborative power of customers, collaborative power of suppliers, the balance of collaborative synergy and competitive rivalry, and therefore the final network of economic synergy. In this model, competition is seen less as an unsettling force and more as a driver of overall market expansion. Collaboration is seen as something which is very resource friendly and which augments the ability of the industry to move forward with the times. This was the 6 forces of collaboration I spoke about. This is again very unique supplement to the theory of strategy. I also talked about relative dimensions that must be considered as part of the development of strategic groups, structural analysis in the industry. In this slide, I have focused only on 5 dimensions: product specialization, manufacturing integration, import intensity, export orientation, R&D intensity, and financial leverage. But there are so many other dimensions which can be productively used to develop insightful structural analysis of an industry and also to analyze a firm's strategic positioning in a particular industrial setting. As part of the lectures, we focused a lot on individual stakeholders of the companies. Buyer group is an extremely important aspect, and buyers are not competitors to an industry or to a firm as proposed by Porter. I said that customer experience is at the core of a company's growth, and customer experience is determined by product performance, product price, service assurance, and product promotion. The need for a company to take the buyers or the customers in its journey of growth has been highlighted with several examples. Similarly, the suppliers are not competitors. Suppliers are also collaborators. Sure, in an industry there will be low supplier power, there will be high supplier power, depending upon the nature of the supplier industries and the original equipment manufacturing industry. But I highlighted how the supplier power can be productively and helpfully utilized to enhance the overall capability of a firm. And the conditions under which supplier power will be low, supplier power will be high have also been delineated. Another important discussion factor has been in terms of the value chain. The value chain of the firm, the value chains of the suppliers have to be understood by a strategic planner of the company. And to maximize the market opportunity, especially for new proprietary developments, we need partnerships between the firm and its vendor base, and that should cover the strategic technologies and operational supplies. The types of competition is also one topic. Every industry based on breakthrough technology starts out as a monopoly. Then it will move into a duopoly, later on oligopoly, and after some more years it could be a fragmented industry. The nature of the industries in each of these developmental phases and the implications for strategy have been considered. As part of this, we looked at the approaches to competition. Should we develop strengths? Should we exploit weaknesses? Or should we do what is best? These are three different approaches to handling competition. I took practical examples from our industrial life and illustrated each of these approaches and suggested that doing what is best is probably the optimal approach to handling competition and to be competitive as a firm. So the types of competitive moves are illustrated in terms of cooperative moves, non-threatening moves, threatening moves, and defensive moves. And each of these has been illustrated with multiple examples. Every company does two things. It creates, develops, or destroys a market. And each company would increases its share, maintains its share, or loses its share. So if you plot all the companies in an industry, you will get a 9-cell grid of market destroyers, market maintainers, market creators, combining with share losers, share maintainers, and share builders. Obviously, we need to have a virtuous situation where we create market as well as we build the share. That is the ultimate pinnacle of good strategic and marketing management. So how do we assess the competitor? We should not assess just by revenue, market share, things like that. We should go beyond those metrics. We should look at the vision, mission, and goals of the competitor, the kind of structure and strategy the company has, the capabilities and talent that are resident in the competitor, and the actual execution and the outcomes of the strategic plans the company would be implementing. That's what the real competitor analysis is. The challenges in achieving this kind of comprehensive and in-depth competitor analysis have also been discussed. I gave a framework for guiding growth. Should we remain in the same strategic group that we are born with? Should we move to another more lucrative strategic group? Should we keep adding new strategic groups, or should we amalgamate all the strategic groups? Companies in the industry keep facing these questions or conundrums as the industry evolves, as their own strategies evolve. All of these 4 growth guidances are possible to be implemented at different points of life in an industry's evolution. To recall, we looked at several frameworks for developing business and business strategy. The BCG matrix, the McKinsey Business Horizons approach, Prahlad's theory of co-competency, and Porter's generic competitive strategy have been considered in some detail for us to develop the strategies for our companies. And I looked at how the 3 generic strategies can be implemented in terms of actual formulation based on the factors that are driving each of the 3 generic strategies. Another important aspect of our lecture series has been in terms of the nexus between technology and talent. We need to always upgrade our products, improving the products, improving the process, achieving incremental benefits at low investments, and almost continuously is a commonly understood philosophy. But we need a transformative approach as well, for which we require talent. That is, we need breakthrough technologies which create new products and processes. we should reap major benefits through such transformative approach. We should have high investments, or we should be able to afford those high investments. For that, we should generate good cash flow from the continuous current businesses, and the transformative approach will be periodic as opposed to, or as contrasted with, the continuous upgrade approach. An organization would require technology and talent to support the continuous upgrade process as well as the transformative approach process. In order to relate technology and strategy, we talked about a working definition of an industry as well as a working definition of a business. Many of these definitions have been illustrated with actual examples from our practical life. And what is a close substitute and what is not a close substitute, what is a competition and what is not a competition, have also been discussed. And what primes the industry for growth? Is it just the customer need, or is it the product, or the process of bringing the product to the customer, or all of these things together? How do we define industry segments? Again, many illustrative examples have been provided for us to appreciate industry definition and business definitions, and how the same industry segment or the product segment could be viewed from different angles based on certain common factors. We can have a product commonality view, by which all the two-wheelers and three-wheelers will be one kind of industry, all passenger cars and utility vehicles will be another kind of industry, utility vehicles and light commercial vehicles will be another kind of industry, and light, medium and heavy commercial vehicles will be another kind of industry. But you can also look at buyer commonality in terms of the purpose that is fulfilled by different types of automobiles. And the other way to look at is manufacturing commonality. Even if product commonality exists in a particular manner and buyer commonality exists in another manner, it is the ability to develop and manufacture a product that would count for an industry or for a firm. Therefore, how do we look at the same product segments from a different classification? So, slice and dice of the product strategy, customer and other groups has been considered as part of this presentation. We looked at the need for a holistic structural analysis. How do we see industry change happening? 4 types of industry change has been discussed: reinforcement, reconfiguration, transformation and reinvention. Similarly, structural analysis has been proposed in terms of single industry, multi-industry, digital plus and multi-industry, multi-horizon structural analysis. Important topic of quality embedded cost management and cost embedded quality management has been proposed. We have people at the core. We have levers for managing cost and quality, and we have the culture of the organization which drives the approach towards cost and quality. But we need to have a quality integrated cost management. It is not one at the cost of the other or at the expense of the other. We need cost competitiveness as also quality superiority. So it has to be an all-encompassing enabler of total cost, quality and time management that has been proposed. Then we spoke about commoditization. Every product, even if the technology and investment is high, gets commoditized at some point of time or the other. So depending on the nature of the technology that is involved and the level of competition that exists in the industry, we can have different levels and scales of commoditization. Those have been discussed as part of this technology, competition and commoditization matrix. But commoditization has to be addressed. It has to be reversed if possible. So the challenges of decommoditization also were discussed. How can we add value in features and make a commoditized product a slightly differentiated product? How can we add additional principal functions in a product so that it becomes a newer product in the hands of the consumer? And finally, a decommoditized product by which we retro design with the basic roots remaining but with contemporary features. So we require a Kaizen mindset and occasionally a breakthrough mindset to be able to move a commoditized product to a decommoditized stage and hopefully to a differentiated stage as well. We talked about niche, that is focus on a particular product group or service group as one of the prescriptions in the competitive strategy framework. And how do we integrate certain shades of cost competitiveness or certain shades of differentiation so that a company can be known as a niche player. We address the strategy in terms of 5 generic industries: fragmented industries, emerging industries, mature industries, declining industries, and global industries, and developed strategic templates for each of the industries. We looked at the global competitive advantage. What are the economic impediments? What are the managerial impediments? And what are the institutional impediments? How do we do global strategic planning? How do we look at various strategic alternatives that are available when you want to globalize your firm? And how do we do that in terms of the various assessments and the evaluations? We focused on vertical integration, that is make or buy in a strategic context, and the options available in terms of taper integration as well as quasi integration. The benefits and costs and various aspects related to integration have been discussed. We looked at capacity expansion as one of the fundamental strategic decisions of a company, and that's what gives growth to the market share objective as well as the overall industry envelope. So how do we make capacity expansion decisions? What could go right and what could go wrong, and what kind of algorithms should we have in capacity expansion? This was followed up with diversification study. Should we go related diversification or should we look at unrelated diversification? And what are the examples? What are the advantages and disadvantages of different types of differentiation? Theory of strategic comparators and responders is another original contribution that has been proposed by me as part of this course. Competitive benchmarking, simple benchmarks are already available. Operational metrics are also available. But what we need is something that goes beyond all of that. That is the framework of strategic comparators and responders. It includes not only internal benchmarking, it also includes external benchmarking, and integrates a holistic appraisal of the strategic plans and execution of the competitors in the industry. I took real life examples of understanding how strategic comparators and responders would work as a framework in real life. Talked about the strategic equilibrium earlier, and I illustrated this with a strategically balanced cooperation concept on dimensions of talent, quality, marketing, manufacturing, portfolio, value chain, finance. How would we move across the industrial spectrum that could be targeted? We could be at the industry median, we could be at the top percentile. In respect of quality, we could be fit for purpose or at the highest quality possible based on the technology available. We could be a narrow portfolio company or a broad portfolio company. How do we achieve all of these things? So how would one become a strategically balanced cooperation? The importance of collaboration. What are the 5 drivers of collaboration? Co-integration, co-development, co-fulfillment, co-expansion, co-saturation. Suppliers, innovators, customers, new entrants, and players within the industry. They are the stakeholders. The co-integration, co-development, co-fulfillment, co-expansion, and co-saturation takes place between the firm and the stakeholders, and collaborative value is built up not only for the firm but for all the stakeholders. This concept keeps coming back as we discuss the case studies in a later lecture as well, and we have experienced that interconnect. I talked about technology as a growth enabler, how it enhances consumption, it creates products, it provides services, and how it improves productivity. The importance of technology as a fundamental driver of economic growth, social growth has been talked about. But there is also an adverse impact of technology in terms of it being a driver of luxury than a necessity, depletion of natural resources, adverse impact of excess growth on environmental pollution, and more focus on commercial interest than social interest. Therefore, how do we make technology a positive strategy to develop the society, at the same time preserve the planet? And what kinds of innovations exist in an industrial setting? Fundamental innovation, analog innovation, integrative innovation, adaptive innovation, substitutive innovation. And examples were given for each of the 5 types of innovation. How do we make a blockbuster product? This is a theme that is very well illustrated by Apple as part of the final technology case study on Apple. 10 factors, and if a company is able to come at a score of 10 for each of these parameters, that would really be a blockbuster product. We talked about perfect innovation or innovative perfection as the ultimate leadership goal, and what are the systems and processes that are available to make this happen, from design thinking to concurrent design and manufacture and the whole value chain analysis. Talked about the technology pyramid. Every industry will have the innovators, the differentiators and the followers. Innovators will have a pioneering spirit, differentiators will have smart superiority, and followers will have cost leadership. And what is the kind of proportioning that happens, and how this definition is related to the three generic competitive strategies we talked about. And therefore, what kind of innovator strategies should we have? Should we have application leadership, experience leadership, or experimental leadership? What does it mean for the development of each of the companies? And how does smart differentiation work? Observing a future, timing a future, learning about a future, imagining a future, sensing a future. These are all 5 faculties of futurism which must be there in the company and its leadership. We talked about, again, very uniquely about the 5 forces of technology. The power of functionalities, power of materials, power of process, power of operating system, and together the power of supportive ecosystem. So the model of 5 technology forces. How do we have technology strategies which are generic? Functional technology strategy, experience technology strategy, and life technology strategy. While you may have at the corporate level generic competitive strategy or strategies, we need to have at the underlying technological level functional technology strategy, experience technology strategy, or life technology strategy, or a combination depending upon the product groups. I also proposed a synthesis of the functional technology strategy and the generic competitive strategy, and how do we really make this happen. What are the 3 types of approaches adopted in terms of the competitive strategy in respect of the industry or the corporation, and in respect of the technology, how each will support and synthesize with each other. Talked about the IP systems, because generation of intellectual property is at the core of strategic technology. Technology management depends on creation and protection of intellectual property. So different kinds of intellectual property, patents, utility, trademark, industrial design, plant variety, geographical indication, appellation of origin were discussed. And design language. How does design evolve from user unfriendly to design optimization to design upgrade to design opportunism? What is the phasing of design evolution? And what are the variations in terms of different categories? That has also been discussed in terms of categories, performance, price, esteem, and policy. What are the cultural anchors of rationality in leadership, in strategy, and in terms of different functional approaches of a company? And why do companies tend to be obdurate despite having certain technological past and despite the potential of a technological future? I have illustrated the cases of technological obduracy and how it also leads to commercial obscurity if the obduracy is not handled properly. And the behavior of companies on the technological dimension, which I called again uniquely as technological behavior, has been illustrated in respect of the user affordability, hardware specifications, operating system, experimental novelty, and timeliness to market. This is again a very interesting concept of integrated technological behavior of a corporation. Talking about public policy, I have taken the example of Japan, where the public policy has been in the forefront of leading industrial development and industrial restructuring where required. That has been a very good example of public policy role modeling. Talked about ESG, environmental empathy, social responsibility, and corporate governance. Talked about technology being the bridge that connects the apparent equity growth divide. As a society, we need public safety, community health, resource conservation, and environmental protection. As private enterprise, we look at economic growth, employment growth, incomes and savings, as well as quality of life. How do these 2 sets of requirements get connected? Technology is the bridge that connects the equity growth divide. Talked about strategic shifts which companies could take, and the way the strategic shifts are executed is illustrated in respect of several companies with several examples. and the scope and impact of different kinds of strategic shifts was also discussed. So we had strategic shifts that were discussed in terms of futuristic impact, disruptive impact, innovative impact, and how we can move from strategic competition to strategic collaboration as part of the strategic shift process in terms of structural change. Should we have a collaborative structure, network structure, or incubating structure? So this interrelationship has been developed. And how do we move from one kind of nature of technology or the ecosystem to another kind as part of this strategic shift process? Talked about metaverse as the new movement, how metaverse will accelerate and deepen interactions, how virtual reality based wearables will take users to an alternative virtual world from the confines of their homes or offices, how it will enhance productivity immensely, free up users from long commuting times, enable healthy surroundings, and provide adaptive flexibility. That has been discussed. We talked about timeliness and timing to suit everyone in the exciting and adaptive virtual world, which will stay perpetual. It could be by design and it could be by requirement as well. So metaverse as the technology and its enablers were considered: Internet of Things, network and chips, blockchains, cryptos and tokens, virtualization engines. Talked about retrofuturism as a concept. Talked about Apple iPhone SE as one of the greatest concepts of retrofuturism, wherein you can design a product with a future in mind and come back to that product 5 years later and make it more contemporary and keep the people who are interested in those nostalgic memories as well as people who are looking for contemporary requirements as part of one new market segment that would evolve. So the importance of retrofuturism. What are the multiple technology platforms that could exist in any industry? In terms of COVID vaccine technology development, I talked about the multiple technology platforms that different companies pursued, but they all had a singular mission. And how did they achieve all of this development in record time? Normally it takes 10 years for a vaccine to develop, but with singular mission, how did these companies achieve within 10 months vaccine development and creditably help the society, global society? How everybody had a common vaccine corporate strategy: develop effective vaccine, obtain national global approvals, manufacture maximum possible doses, collaborate with institutions for maximal vaccination spread and intensity. However, they adopted different business models. Pfizer was completely self-funded, different technology. Moderna largely self-funded, own technology. AstraZeneca collaborative alliance with the developer as well as manufacturer. Bharat Biotech indigenous manufacturing development, world leader it has become in terms of that technology. Gamaleya, the Russian technology, largely state funded. Serum Institute as a global CMO, ability to manufacture billions of doses for India as well as for the world. And how everybody did the marketing under national government policies and negotiations. So these are the different business models that worked under a common vaccine mission globally. And the importance of leadership at Pfizer, how Pfizer was able to achieve something which others could not as easily achieve all by themselves. So what was the foresight, what is the persistence, value chain management, agility and courage as a leader, as a company. I proposed a leadership model of Pfizer. Talked about markets and innovation, how these are all interrelated. How can we alter product market configurations based on the types of innovation that we can have. What are the objects of innovation? From product innovation and service innovation to business model and process innovation to organizational and social innovation and finally environmental innovation. Talked about the impact of innovation on life in terms of the newness of technology as well as impact on the market. Talked about a framework for innovation in terms of configuration, offering and experience. How do we personalize our innovation experience from traditional standardization to mass customization to experience personalization that we all seek now. Talked about the life of Steve Jobs as part of the case study coverage towards the end. I spoke at length how strategy and technology get integrated and driven by a leader who represents the life and soul of technology. So how he was a great technology visionary and how he was a great strategic thinker and ultimately how he could transform a particular domain of consumer electronics and a particular domain of computing and connectivity was well illustrated by the Apple case study. Talked about the design language as a concept which he premiered onto the global technological scene and how he humanized the technologies. Talked about the 3 leadership characteristics that elevate innovation: deep expertise, both at team and individual levels, immersion in the details across the value chain, and collaborative intra and interfunctional debates. Talked about change and continuity being extremely important. When you have an iconic leader such as Steve Jobs, who excelled in both innovation and perfection, and someone else like Tim Cook takes over, both the opportunity and challenge are having change with continuity, more perfection, more innovation, and that's what Tim Cook achieved. Jobs created a lasting foundation for Apple. How he developed that has been discussed as part of the Apple case study. So we had a strong course content. We had a very unified movement of the strategy technology integration over our 12 weeks of pedagogy, covering 60 lectures and this 61st lecture. For your reference, I am giving you all the details of the themes of different weeks and the associated topics in terms of the individual lectures. I believe that as a result of this course, you have been able to develop critical strategic skills. You have grasped the art and science of formulating and executing strategy in multiple contexts. You would have turned tech savvy, whether you are a technologist who already understands but needs to understand strategic implications, or a business person who understands strategy but needs to understand the technological implications. I am sure you would have gained from this course. You would understand and appreciate the role of technology in strategy and deploy effectively. Similarly, you will understand the role of strategy in technology. You would become future ready, integrate strategy and technology for futuristic and sustainable enterprise development. We will be reflecting a holistic professional development which can enable and support modernity and transportation. I must thank you with all my sincerity, dear learners, for having participated in this course, and it has been a great experience developing this course and offering to you as part of the platform of NPTEL. I am thankful to NPTEL for providing me the opportunity to share and integrate myself with the learning community, and it has been a great experience, and I am sure you would have also benefited. I look forward to continued association with all the learners through the NPTEL platform. Thank you, learners, and thanks to NPTEL. Namaste once again.